Hey, what's up? It's Randy Blythe. I'm here talking about my new book, Dark Days. Check it out right here. Listen to our discussion we're about to have on Loudwire.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Talking Books with Gruhamed.
Is it evening?
Maybe it is where they're watching it.
Masterpiece.
Yes. Today, my guest, D. Randy Blythe, author of Dark Days, a harrowing memoir about a man imprisoned in the Czech Republic for a crime he did not commit. Thank you very much, Randy, for joining me. He also sings for Lamb of God.
Every now and then.
Yeah, here and there. So, I truly did enjoy your book. It is really an awesome, dense, fulfilling read. I would call it pure vodka.
Pure vodka.
Pure vodka. That's how highly I think of the book.
That's
it's like
good.
Think of dark days, pure vodka.
Pure vodka. Don't make me think less of you, because the guy who
I'm-
characterized it as pure vodka was an idiot.
No, I'm not like a Dorge.
Yeah.
But yeah, read the book. You can read all about that. But anyway, it was great. And actually, Corey Taylor dropped by here pretty recently, and you were telling us how he was helping you out. You know, give you a bit of advice.
Yeah, if I was like freaking out, I'd just, him, Duff, a bunch of other people,
Yeah.
I'd just be like, I'm losing it. They're like, you're going to be okay.
Yeah, and he said that his advice to you, his primary advice, I guess, was just to kind of like get everything in your head and just like, bleh, just like vomit it out on the paper,
Yes.
see what happens, then look at it later. Yeah. Is that kind of what you did with this book?
Yeah, that's that's kind of, although, I mean, Corey's style of writing and mine are vastly different.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that comes across when you read both of our books is that it's our voice.
Yes, totally.
You know, when you read Corey's voice, if you know Corey, it's Corey. That's Corey, you know. And when you read mine, it's me.
Yes.
I think Corey he's probably a little bit more powerful in his vomiting, like at first, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm a little bit more reserved.
Projectile vomiting.
Yeah, he's just like, ah! And, you know, that's his third book, so he's a little bit more in the process. But he is correct. I think one thing that stops people from writing books is sitting there and thinking, I have to have everything perfect. This has to be perfect. And then you get paralyzed when you're writing, you know, because it's never going to be perfect. It's just like making music, man. You know, you gotta, when you're starting writing a song, you gotta get the idea out, and then you know, some of our best songs sounded like crap at first, but we had to get the basic idea down. And with my book, yeah, man, it was a matter of getting it on the page. But I'm a pretty slow writer because I write clean.
Okay. Yeah.
There wasn't really any rewriting. It was all amputation.
Damn.
Yeah.
All right. And you know, the book is solely, well, not solely, but very heavily about it's about your desire to do the right thing in all these different circumstances.
Yes.
And you even write about these other people in history who stepped up and did the right thing, and you know, were willing to and did die to do the right thing. You know, when you were in prison or when you were writing this book, were there any people that you were keeping in mind as you know people who did the right thing? These are the kind of people that I respect.
Sure. You know, my father gave me a book when I was in prison by a guy named Dietrich Bonhoeffer, and it's called Letters and Papers from Prison, or Papers and Letters from Prison. I can't remember which one it is. I think it's Letters and Papers from Prison. But he was a minister, a German, I believe he was Presbyterian or Lutheran minister, man of the cloth, you know, who was arrested by the Nazis during World War II for being involved in a plot. They accused him of being involved in a plot to kill Hitler, which of course was true.
Turns out he was.
It turns out he was.
Yeah.
He's a minister, but he's like, you know, this guy is an insane, genocidal, megalomaniac, fascist dictator. He's got to go. And it's not like, the guy condoned just, oh, we're having a problem with this dude, let's kill him. He was like, no, you know, this guy needs to be taken care of. This is the only way. And it's true, it was the only way to really get to that point. So, you know, in Nazi Germany, you were under severe watch. And they had the Hitler Youth who would report their own parents, you know, anybody who was kind of like, I don't really think this is right what this weird dude with the weird mustache is doing. They narc you out. This guy, being in a sense, a public person, being a writer, being a minister of a church, he took a very huge risk in becoming involved in this, and he did the right thing. And it didn't work. They didn't. He got popped. Yeah. But you know, he did the right thing. He went to prison, and eventually the Nazis executed him, because, you know, they weren't very forgiving people.
No.
You know, but he did the right thing, and you know, just throughout history, there's a lot of people who have done things in scary situations and proceeded to do the right thing. And doing something courageous is not the absence of fear at all, you know? If you're doing something and it doesn't scare you, that's not brave.
I think that's what strength is, really.
You know, it's, because I was scared, dude, but you know, I felt the need to try and do what my inner moral compass, the direction it pointed me is an ethical true north.
Sure, absolutely. And one thing that really caught my eye when I was reading is, you know, when you were handed the first of the paperwork that said the accusations against you, that you were able to kind of have this crystallizing moment where you just said to yourself, focus, stay calm, and, you know, I think it was as they were leading you out of the airport, you were thinking, oh, you know, this will be a hell of a book someday. Yeah. And to me, I was wondering, was that you kind of just like reaching out for something positive in such like a seemingly hopeless moment?
It may have been, because at first there wasn't like this crystallizing moment. At first it was very surreal. Okay. Like time got weird. Like time itself, I was like, whoa, what is going on? You know, everything got like really strange mentally, you know. Having done drugs in my past, it was kind of psychedelic for a minute. You know, I was like, whoa, this is really surreal. But then I realized this was going on. It's like, toosh, you know, you got to focus right now. You got to pay attention to every single thing that's going on. You can't act foolish. You can't say anything. You got to watch how you behave, because they're going to take note of this, and this is going to be on record. But I did have this moment where my brain just like, this spark was just like, poof, you know, these are details. This is a story, man. You know, this, and I think what that was is maybe it was my brain, one part of my brain going on autopilot, because I'm a photographer, I'm a writer, I write music. It's how my brain works, you know. But even when I had that moment, you know, they're leading me out. These guys, they literally had face masks on, you know. All you could see were their eyeballs, or big dudes and machine guns. Yeah. And they're leading me out, and I'm like, this is crazy. This will make like a good book one day. Immediately another part of my brain was like, what is wrong with you, dude? You know, these are like, you know, these guys look like they're here to get bin Laden. You need to stop thinking about writing and pay attention. So it seemed almost inappropriate. And it wasn't like I sat in prison and was like, this is going to be great for my memoir. I'm so glad this is going on. I wasn't thinking about writing a book at all. Yeah. But it was, you know, it's just, I noted it, man. It was a bizarre little thing, you know. I guess it's just how my brain works. Sure.
And, you know, you paint a very good picture of everything that's going on, really. I think you really can place, it's very visual. You place yourself in all these different situations. You can really take the reader with you. One of them is, of course, the 2010 Czech show. And this was back when you were starting to get sober, weren't quite there yet. And you actually write in the book that if you did happen to drink before the show, then you felt like you would have had no choice but to plead guilty.
Or at the very least, I said plead guilty, or at the very least say, I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
Because, you know, my recollection of that show is hazy as it is. I only have a fairly specific recollections of that day for a few kind of unique reasons. It's kind of a perfect storm. Number one, it's our first time in a country. And I always remember the first time I visited a country because I research where we're going. I'm like, maybe there's something cool here, you know? And I like, when I'm on stage, I like to say something that the people in the audience will be like, this guy is actually paying attention to where he is. He doesn't think he's in Wisconsin or something, you know? So I'm always interested the first time we go to a country. I always remember that. The show, it was particularly rowdy for us. Like it felt like an old school warehouse show when we used to just play on the floor and there was no security. That hadn't happened in years because we had strict security requirements. So that was kind of like, oh, that sucked. But we didn't know anybody had been hurt.
Sure.
You know? And then the third reason that I really remembered that day is a sad one, is because I got a call right as I got off stage. Was that, you know, my publicist kept on calling me. Normally she doesn't call me because I'm in Europe, it's expensive. I'm like, something must be wrong. I picked up. She's like, Randy, Paul Gray is dead. And I'm like, oh, man, you know? And that, you know, he was a friend of mine. You know?
Yeah.
I love that dude. So when you hear that a friend is dead, you always remember where you got the news, where something momentous occurred. So all of that kind of put what memories I had in place, you know, what memories I had. That being said, I don't have an exact memory of that whole day. You know, it was just another day on tour. It was just another show. But I do know that I didn't have anything to drink before that evening because I found a journal later. You know, and I write about that in the book. Right, the night before I went back to go to trial, I was really nervous, but I was like, I'd remembered that day because we'd gone to Old Town Prague, and I'd remember writing in the journal, and I'd remember feeling like, at that point, I was right at the end of my drinking. I quit drinking like a few months later. I was writing a lot about it, about how sick I was of everything. Yeah. So the night before I went back to trial, I was like, man, you probably have a journal entry from that day somewhere. So I went and looked through my old stuff, and I was scared because I was like, what if this has something that was like, man, I beat this kid up or something. But it didn't.
Yeah.
And it also said, I didn't even drink. I didn't even feel like drinking until I got the news that Paul had died today. Today sucks.
Right.
So that was concrete, like, there it was. I wrote it that evening after we left the show, and I was still writing, so I couldn't have been, even after the show, I couldn't have been drunk because my handwriting was legible, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, man, no, if I had been drinking, there'd been, I mean, because when I drink, you know, anything that happens is a mystery to me.
Sure, yeah. And you know, that's kind of a frightening thing when you read this book is that, yeah, you weren't drinking that day, but then, but if you had gotten that news earlier, it very easily may have been.
Yeah, fortuitously, that did not occur.
Yes, thankfully. And speaking about that stuff, another interesting thing that you write about is that you say that you view your alcoholism as far more important than your profession when it comes to your personal character.
Of course.
Yeah, can you tell me a little about that?
Sure. My job, what I do for a living, one of the ways I creatively express myself is I'm the singer of Lamb of God.
Yeah.
Right? Lamb of God's not going to last forever. It's just not. I'm 44 years old. I'm not going to be Mick Jagger. I'm not going to be on stage singing Laid to Rest until the day I die. Nobody wants to see an 80-year-old me trying to jump off the barricade or jump off a riser and falling and breaking a hip, you know, or throwing my back out. It hurts enough as it is. It's just not going to last forever. When it ends, I will no longer be the singer of Lamb of God. I don't walk down the street thinking, I am the singer of Lamb of God. and this is how it affects the way I walk down the street. However, I'm a sober alcoholic. When I walk down the street, I pass a bar, I still see it. I'm like, I'm not going in there. I remember what that does. I view everything through the lens of my alcoholism. Everything. And when I am no longer the singer of Lamb of God, I will still be an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Till the day I die. I hope I'm a sober alcoholic. But I never get to be a not alcoholic. It doesn't go away.
Yeah.
You know, if I had a drink or two right now, man, I'd be right back where I was. Immediately, boom, because I don't have a drink or two. Once I start drinking, it's over, dude. I'm not interested in having a couple of beers. I've never had a couple of beers in my life. You know, a couple of beers, a couple of what? A couple of cops, a couple of trips to the hospital.
Yeah.
What is that? Screw that. So, no, man. And it's not like I'm sitting here all the time like, I can't drink.
No,
I can't drink. This is, I've reached a point where I'd had enough. But I do view everything through that, you know. I choose not to drink today, and it's a much better life. But it's always there.
Yeah.
It's always something that if I forget that, it'll take me out. Yeah. Lamb of God, I leave. It's cool. It was a good run.
Totally. And kind of a lighter note in the book. I was actually really surprised on how funny it could be at times, because it really was funny, and it was great how, like, you know, your real inner punk rock self came out in these different certain situations where, you know, you're just like talking this hilarious shit to the guard who just because he can't speak English, and you're frustrated and you're just saying all this hilarious stuff to him, while, you know, of course, keeping yourself calm and all that.
Yeah,
but
that was hard with a couple of those guards because they were jerks.
Yeah, the Tom Selleck at number
Tom
one.
Tom Selleck number one was a jerk. No, Tom Selleck number two was a jerk. Tom Selleck number one was just having a bad week for a while.
Yeah.
And there's this other guy, Bradley. He sucked. Screw you, Bradley.
Yeah. Oh boy, Bradley. And like, you know, even just messing, you know, when you're doing the ink blot test, and you're coming up with these like crazy situations when they're holding it up in front of you. Yeah. You're just like, okay, this is my creative domain. Yeah. Like, I'm gonna create like the happiest, most wonderful. Yeah. It was just so interesting to see that part of you.
Well, the situation was so bizarre, and I never lost track of the fact that this is a tragic situation.
Yes.
You know, as soon as I learned that someone was dead, particularly a fan of my band, are you kidding me? I'm like, okay, this is serious. But I can't sit in any situation for 24 hours a day like, oh my God, you know, what's gonna happen to me? This is terrible. That sucks. That's no way to deal with reality, because reality, if you are waiting for reality to constantly be perfect and be the way you like it, you're gonna be disappointed, you know, constantly disappointed. So I find, you know, admittedly I have a black sense of humor. There's a bit of gallows humor.
Sure.
You know, and I can laugh at misery. My misery. I don't laugh at other people's human misery. That's not funny to me. Mm-hmm. But with me, I'm like, oh, this sucks. This totally sucks. You know, why? I'm like, weird things happen to me. They always have. So, I used to get mad about it. I'll complain to my wife, why is this happening to me? And she just looks at me and she'd be like, honey, look at you. This is obviously your fault, come on. So I'm like, you're right. Whatever. So you laugh, or it's better to laugh, or otherwise you're just gonna sit there and freak out and cry or panic. Yeah. When was the last time you were in a stressful situation and you're like, I need some help, I need some advice, and someone said, panic? That's good advice. I've
only ever told myself that.
Okay,
unfortunately.
It's time to panic. This is going to do me a lot of good.
Yeah.
I made sure I laughed every day while I was in prison. It wasn't like I wrote this book and I'm like, I'm going to construct these funny scenes. Like, I laughed every day. I made a point of making sure I laughed every day. I was trying to maintain some PMA. Even if it was only at how bad everything sucked and the ridiculousness. I had to laugh because help me maintain a positive mental attitude, as the almighty bad brains have instructed unto us.
Absolutely. And one part of the book that I found like truly, truly beautiful was that when you finally got to see your wife, that you knew, and you were right, that she knew you so well that she knew that you would be all right, that you would be calm, you'd be collected, you were going to get through it, you weren't going to, you know, as you say, panic or just lose your mind or anything. I found that to be a really, really beautiful representation of your relationship, and also her own strength when it came to the press and all that. So, I mean, what can you tell me about how that felt to know that she knew you were all right, and then therefore you knew that she was going to be okay too?
That was a big deal to me,
Yeah.
because I'm a worrier. I don't worry about myself. I'm like a cockroach. You know what I mean? When the bomb drops, I'm gonna live.
You're all right.
You know, it's gonna be okay. Because you know, I've lived rough ways, but you know, I knew my wife was a strong person because she's a really good person, because when we got together, I wasn't sober. She put up with a lot of stuff for me. I wasn't a very nice guy sometimes, you know, but she could see there's a decent man in me. And, you know, she put up with some stressful stuff from me, you know. So regardless of that, I was worried about her, you know, because, you know, I was like, God, I know she's worried about me, you know. And when I wrote letters to her, and before I saw her, and I wrote letters to my band, I wrote I'd write jokes and stuff in the letters. Because that way they could tell I was keeping my chin up, you know?
Yeah.
But still, I was worried about her, man, you know? I mean, it's one thing to be in my shoes, you know, to be in prison, and I can understand that, and I'm like, I'm cool, but my wife is on the outside, and she's put up with so much crap from me, and now I'm sober, and everything's going okay, and now, blam, all of a sudden, her husband's in prison. So I was worried about, you know, her dealing with that. And when I saw her, you know, I'm like, are you okay? Is everything okay? And yeah, I'm okay. And people were asking her, I found out later, people were constantly asking her, like, you know, how are you? And she's like, I'm fine. If my husband is handling this, if he can handle that, I can handle it.
Sure.
So, but to see her and, you know, have her reassure me that she was okay, and have her be calm and collected and not weeping in front of the paparazzi, and just be a strong woman. I was immensely proud of her, immensely. Still am. I love you. I love you too, but I love you, honey.
She's far stronger than I am.
She's an awesome lady. I love you, baby.
Absolutely. Another thing that surprised me about the book is that, you know, you're talking about your memories of that night, and all these different things that you're trying to remember, and things you're hearing reported, and all this.
Affecting the way I'm thinking about things, yeah.
Yeah, and then, you know, it actually jumped out at me, and I was like, you know, because I thought I knew like so much about the whole thing already, and I didn't realize that at one point you kind of thought that like maybe I did accidentally do this.
Right.
That like was like, whoa.
Well,
like,
dude, I was arrested, and they're telling me, put yourself in these shoes. Do you remember? Let me ask you this. Today is, you know,
I don't even know what today
is.
Yeah,
it's like July 15th or 16th or something
like
you
that.
know?
Yeah.
Do you remember where you were? And we're in 2015. Do you remember where you were on July 15th? 2013, between 8 o'clock and 9:10 p.m.
Absolutely.
Do you remember that? Do you remember
No.
that?
God,
okay,
no.
well, all right. I'm going to take you out of here. I'm going to throw you in handcuffs. I'm going to surround you with people who can barely speak your language. I'm going to hand you a piece of paper detailing something that you have no memory of whatsoever. And I'm going to say, you might go to prison for 5 to 10 years. and then I'm going to lock you in a dark cell, and that's the only thing in English you're going to be able to read. It's going to be in broken English.
Yeah.
And you're going to sit there for 3 days reading this thing, and then you're going to have these shrinks asking you these weird questions and wanting you to tell them. You're going to be asked these questions again and again. Explain this to me, explain this to me. And the only information you don't have a cell phone. You don't have anything. They won't even show you a picture of this supposed person that you killed.
Yeah.
After a while, you start trying to remember this incident, and you're reading this stuff, and you're like, maybe this did happen this way, you know?
Yeah.
And I had this memory of this one guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who kept on coming up on stage.
Yes.
And he was super annoying, and I thought he was either drunk or insane, right? I couldn't tell which. I wasn't giving him a breathalyzer at the time.
Yeah.
We're in the middle of a set, and I remember wrestling him to the ground, finally, after he'd been up 3 or 4 times, and screaming in his face the whole time, screaming and singing, never stopping, and saying, "Stop, you jerk," you know, and him like, rocking out until like he wanted to get up, and then I decided, no, you're not getting up. You wanted to be up here so bad, now you're up here and you're with me.
Yeah.
You're going to get up when I decide you get up. And that freaked him out, and that was my goal, to freak him out so then he'd take me seriously. You know, all of a sudden, all these people, these pictures of this young man surface, and everybody's like, that's the guy, you know,
Sure.
and I'm being told there's video of you and this guy, and there's pictures in the newspaper, and my lawyer brings me a picture of me on top of this guy. He's throwing the horns, but the headline says in Czech something like, "The Death Grip," or
yeah,
something lurid like that. I'm like, get the fuck out of here. But, you know, I start thinking, man, I remember, you know, wrestling this guy, and he was a jerk. What if I don't remember, like, shoving him from the stage or anything, but what if everybody was saying he's a dead guy. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, crap, I did have this physical interaction with him, and he was persistent, and it was gnarly, you know, he wouldn't stop. And then I start thinking, like, you know, oh my God, it could have happened, you know. That guy's alive, you know, because he called the police. He's like, no, I'm alive. He shows up to court and he says, I was wasted.
Yeah.
Randy didn't beat me up. He wasn't choking me. He wasn't kicking me. He wasn't punching me. His actions were entirely appropriate given my drunken stupidity. That kid manned up. He took a responsibility for his own actions.
Yes.
You know, he was about the only other person in this whole thing that was willing to do so. And I am eternally grateful to him. He manned up. He did the right thing, you know. But that was, you know, information coming at me, dude, you know. Not even in English, you know. All these things, your mind is spinning, you know. So I had to ask myself, what happened here? I don't know. I need to find out.
Yeah, absolutely. When you're in prison and you're describing all these characters, you really are painting them in really memorable ways. You know, I found myself remembering like everyone's names or the nicknames you gave them that were funny. You know, and you're a very well-read guy. You love books.
Right.
Do you feel like your long history with reading and ingesting all this information through all these great books, did that help you sort of put together how to process these characters and how to
in real time or during the writing of the book?
During the writing of the book.
Yes, during the writing of the book, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I had their nicknames while I was locked up because
yeah.
I couldn't say their Czech names, or, you know, some of them are guard, they aren't going to tell me your name.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm like, oh, that dude looks like Archie Bunker, so he's Archie Bunker, you know. But absolutely, when I sat down to write, I am a big fan of descriptive writing. I'm a fan of writing that takes you to another place. And while I don't want you, in fact, to go to a Czech prison ever,
yes.
I don't want you to go through this. When you're reading my book, I want you to be there with me. I want you to take the journey with me. That way you can understand where I'm coming from. And that's what a good book does, man. It takes you someplace else. And I believe, to be an effective writer, to craft effective prose, beautiful prose, you have to read effective, beautiful prose. You have to write and you have to read, you know? And I've been reading since I was a little kid. This is my first book. you know. And so I got the writing done too.
Yeah, absolutely. So, last question for you. You know, now that this is finished, you're done with your press obligations, you're moving on with photography and music and stuff. Is it finally time, just like an old tour or an older album, to have this, not the book, but the content, be sort of a talking point of the past? Is it time to move on?
Yeah, I want to put this is why, one of the big reasons why I wrote the book is because people always want to know what happened. There's so much misinformation. And beyond the fact that I think there's some things in there that could be useful to some people, you know, that could help them through difficult times, it's going to clarify anything. I don't really have anything else to say. I wrote a 500-page book about it.
Yes, absolutely. So that concludes it.
Thank
awesome.
you very much.
Thank you so much for coming. Truly appreciate your time.
It, man.
Thank you very much. Dark Days, it's out now. I can't say enough about this book. Pick it up. Randy Blythe, everybody.
Thank you.